someone who gives a lot in relationships and still ends up feeling a little empty? We're getting into something I see all the time, especially with people who are generous, attuned, and deeply caring. They know how to give, they know how to show up. But receiving, well, things get a little bit complicated. That's why my guest Lorina and I are going to talk about. So, welcome to the Better Sex Podcast. My name is Deborah Catt, and I am a certified tantric educator, a dominatrix, and a relationship guide for over 20 years. This is where we have unfiltered conversations about sex and relationship, the kind that help you explore what's real, what's possible, and what actually works for you so that you can have sex on your terms. I truly believe that a sexy world is a happier and a safer world. If you want to do your part in creating that world, hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It helps people find these conversations and join the movement towards more love, better sex everywhere. If you're ready to take your sex and love from stuck to something that actually feels good again, then I invite you to head over to deborahcat.com and book a Truth and Clarity call. This is a one-on-one conversation where we look at what actually goes on in your sex and love life and what would like to shift. Because a podcast, even as good as this one is, can only spark curiosity. The real change comes from practice. And with that note, I am so excited to introduce and to welcome my guest, Lorina Manzanita. She is a somatic intimacy coach and certified somatic experiencing and psychedelic somatic trauma resolution practitioner. That is a mouthful, and I can't wait to hear more about that.
A little extra on the mouth.
That's amazing. Like, I'm so curious how these things fit together. So, I mean, I know that part of your genius, part of the place where you sit is the intersection of eros and neurobiology and really supporting, people who are sensitive or empaths to have more relationship wisdom, and so that they can show up and be nourished by their relationships as much as they honor and nourish others.
Yeah.
So I am super curious, like, sex and relationship, like, how did you get here?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think most healing arts practitioners have their own wounded healer story, and I certainly come from that ilk, came from that path. I was in a childhood family system, Filipino Catholic, father with anger issues. They're doing the best that they can, and also there is very little attention paid to my happiness, boundaries, my emotional well-being. They didn't know how to track those things. And I think in the absence of my needs and desires and boundaries getting properly acknowledged, I was hyper aware of everybody else's needs and boundaries and emotions and feelings, and to try and create a sense of safety. And it's a limited sense of safety, paying attention over there more so than here. And it was the best I could at the time, could do at the time. And eventually I found my way into somatic experiencing after a lot of relationships where there was some pretty epic self-abandonment going on. Giving more than I was receiving, losing track of what I needed, not really knowing how to let go if it wasn't in alignment or if my needs were getting met, and getting stuck in relationships where I often felt like kind of a fixer, like I'm working on a project, right? I got so good at it, it became my profession. And also, I wasn't super fulfilling. So I got into somatic experiencing, trauma resolution work. I learned how to come into a healthier relationship with my anger, with my body. I learned how to intentionally hang out in pleasure to help me develop more resiliency and move through trauma patterns. And my relating life was dramatically different after that.
Well, I love hearing that, especially as you were saying, hanging out in pleasure. I could really feel that in my own body. But before we go any further, I just, somatic experiencing. What is that? Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. It's a modality developed by PhD Peter Levine. I'm forgetting how long ago when he first developed this work. But he wrote a book called Waking the Tiger. And the question that drove him was, why is it that animals in the wild, even though they're exposed to all sorts of life-threatening circumstances, don't experience trauma the way that humans do? And his conclusion was that, in essence, we weren't really paying attention to our animal body instincts that know how to move and process the high charge of trauma through our bodies. Yeah. And so it really leans into the nervous system wisdom and, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, so it's a very body-based modality, and so you hear nervous system regulation a lot
Right.
these days, which is awesome. It's a thing. It's a really great thing. And I think, for me, the first time I really heard about it was through Peter Levine's work. And just for those that are listening, nervous system regulation being, God, how would you put that into words?
It's a certain resiliency. It's a capacity to respond to the challenges of life with presence. It's the ability to track your needs and your capacities and adjust accordingly. When we're not well regulated, we can be reactive. We can get overwhelmed and shut down. We could go into any one of the classic survival strategies: fight, flight, freeze, right, or fawn. And yeah, there's a certain level of distress that's beyond our capacity to regulate or modulate in a harmonious way. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, that totally does. And again, for folks that are listening that may have heard the word and not be really, not quite understanding what it is, because again, it is a buzzword right now, which is wonderful. Having more people aware that they are able to respond and not react, hopefully will, bring more pleasure and more sex in a better world.
Yes, indeed. Quality sex, too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
So I have to ask, what is quality sex?
The name of my business is called Integrating Eros. And so for me, Eros is life force energy oriented towards pleasure and embodiment. And like you mentioned, Dan Siegel's work, interpersonal neurobiology, and he talks about healthy systems as displaying what he calls phases: flexibility, adaptability, coherence, energy, and stability. So in my mind, like, Eros has a really big spectrum from walking down the street and feeling the like sun on your face and just kind of luxuriating in that and feeling juicy about being a live creature on the planet, to like orgasms and fluids flying around, right? So like there's a pretty big spectrum, and it's a little hard to define of like when do we go from kind of like ambient eros to okay, we're having sex. And one could have all sorts of different debates about what is sex. The classic penis and vagina thing is super limited if we're just talking about that as being sex. So quality. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I know I can monologue, so feel free to interrupt me at any point. Yeah, so quality sex in my mind has that quality of regulation. We're responsive versus reactive. We have greater capacity for attunement, connecting with oneself, connecting with another. There's a nice dance between each other where there's like pleasure, but we're also grounded. Yeah, it's life force generating. Versus, I think, Dan Siegel's description of an unhealthy system, which usually displays some qualities of rigidity or chaos, which I think you can find a lot in the realm of sexuality. There's a lot of rigidity, moralistic, fundy, rules-based stories around how sex should be. And then can be a lot of chaos, which is like much of what we're seeing in the Epstein files reality right now, like violation, gaslighting, various examples of it's like you're not sure what's true, right? And there's a certain level of disconnect. So more attunement and aliveness and harmony, please.
I love that. And I just want to circle back for just a second, because what you were starting to talk about is this idea that, we have this incredibly rigid view of what sex is, right?
Yeah.
This idea that two people come together, there's, a little bit of foreplay, there's escalation, there's penetration, there's climax, and then there's napping. And like this is what we see, right? This is the cultural, this is what we see culturally. This is what we're told. The objective is climax. The objective is penis and vagina, or some version of penetration. And what you were starting to talk about, this idea of expanding what we consider sex to be, and therefore what we consider successful sex to be, and as you said, quality sex, I think is really important, because as we look at different models of what sex is and who's it for, and also, this version of like, not everybody is moves that fast. Not everybody is, one of the things that Dan Savage, who's one of my absolute favorite, he's one of my favorite folks around who talks about sex. But one of the things that he said is, one of the beauties of same-sex sex is that you actually have to talk about what you like, right? Because there is
Yeah.
no assumption. And he was saying that, for, I guess, some study he said he did, is like 60% of gay men don't engage in penetration, right? And so that is like not, that is not the way we think about that. That's not the way
Right.
that we picture that. But A, there has to be a conversation of what works.
Yep.
And then there has to be an acceptance. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but acknowledgement that like it of what it actually is going to look like,
Right.
and then there's lots of different models that look at this, but one of my favorites is the erotic blueprints.
Yeah.
And, the idea that you can have two people who are interested in energetic sex and may or may not ever have that penetrative moment, or people who are super sensual. And, so there's all these different versions. And I love what you're talking about with bringing in quality. And the word that really stood out to me that I've been thinking a lot about lately is nourishing. Is this experience a nourishing experience?
Right.
And is this something, and again, kind of coming back to this idea of folks who are great at nourishing others, but
Right.
may or may not be so great at receiving that nourishment. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that and some of the things that you have found either for yourself or with your clients that helps to shift that a little bit.
Yeah. We were talking about Eros and how it lives on a big spectrum. I think when it comes to nourishment, I think it's important that we widen our aperture and increase our perspective of opportunities to be nourished. And I think it's also important to recognize the role we have in receiving nourishment. So you can eat a strawberry, and you could do that mindfully, you could do that slowly, you could totally be in a timeless experience of savoring that juicy, yummy strawberry. Or you could be just stuffing strawberries down your mouth, right? It's the same basic material, but there's a quality of engagement where in the first example of savoring, we're slowing down and we're allowing ourselves to be impacted by the nourishment that's available in that strawberry. Same with that description I was talking about earlier, walking down the street, feeling the sun on your face. I recently gave a talk. It was called Waterfalls and Me, an eco-erotic love story. And I talked about like my love affair with waterfalls. So I think so many of us who feel kind of empty aren't recognizing the myriad of opportunities for nourishment in our lives. Many of the men I've worked with who've got like a libido gap with their partners and kind of like just focus on their partner to where she's not necessarily feeling an authentic yes to engaging in sexual play. Like so much of the work I've done with them is helping them to expand their perspective of where they can receive play, nourishment, pleasure. And so that sometimes that's in creativity, so that sometimes that's in nature. And then so we create kind of like a less of a monoculture orientation to only this thing is nourishing. If I get like a partner who's this tall, who touches me in this way, who shows up, this often in my throughout the week, and like we have all these kind of conditions around this is how I'm going to get nourishment, then it really cuts us off from the opportunities that are available to be nourished, to get nourishment, and through interactions and speaking with a stranger, through like the beauty of of nature, or our own breath and our own bodies.
Well, it's what's interesting is you're talking about, I mean, as you started with the strawberry, which was awesome. Um, we have this thing that we often call hunger around sexuality. And what you're describing is this idea that there's a very limited, rigid way that this hunger can be fed. And once we start expanding that, we have a lot more opportunity. And, it's been my experience, and this may be, yours as well, but when working with those couples where there's that discrepancy, right? Oftentimes, one partner is so overwhelmed by, the hunger or the need.
Right.
And the idea that, like, if I say yes to this one little thing, like if my partner's kissing my neck and I go and enjoy this, then it's going to, I'm going to be obligated to, to take it all the way to penetrative sex or whatever that is. And so one of the things that and this kind of talks a little bit towards the folks that are willing to, they either shut it down or they go all the way versus kind of having a like, okay, I'm open to this. And I'm wondering if that's something that you've found with your clients and working with your couples.
Yeah, I have seen that in couples for sure. It could also apply on some level with like dating, like somebody who's super single, maybe they've been an overgiver in their past relationships, and they're interested in dating again, but they're kind of scared if they open up, they might lose themselves. In saying yes more often than is really authentic to them. So that's like the program I'm developing. It's called Held and Fulfilled. It's all about supporting empaths learn how to own their desires and boundaries, which feels super intimately intertwined here. And then so in terms of fear of saying yes because it might go into a big thing, it's like there's two skills that are kind of needing to be addressed here. On one level, who the person who's like super hungry, learning how to nourish themselves, right? And we just discussed all the different ways, opportunities for nourishment, so they're not just fixated on the like, oh, my hunger will be satisfied through this one particular act with this one particular person in this one particular way. So practicing nourishment, practicing actively filling up their cup so that they could be more spacious when they approach their partner. And then if they're in a more spacious, filled up space, chances are their partner doesn't feel like the weight of all that hunger coming down on them. And there's more of a likelihood of a feeling of safety in opening up. Ideally, the person who may have struggled with boundaries in the past has also done some work around reclaiming their voice, learning how to express boundaries, become friendly with their anger. So like if it goes to that far, they can like freely express it if necessary in a safe, regulated way, right? So I think like in the kind of larger sociological scheme of things in this hyper-gendered reality we tend to operate in, I think there's an opportunity for a lot of men who are sexually hungry to learn how to get nourished in other ways beyond sex with women that
Mm-hmm.
usually requires vulnerability, which sadly our culture doesn't necessarily support men in being present to their vulnerability. So I appreciate the learning curve of that, and then the struggles and like learning how to receive nourishment by acknowledging your needs rather than just being a constant stoic provider. And then with women, it's like, how can we learn how to like be more feisty and honor our boundaries and also be heart open, right? Like there's a
Mm-hmm.
paradox there of like boundaried and also heart open. And that is a big learning curve, I think, for everybody. So I'm more interested in like the collective system versus just like
Mm-hmm.
one person's got a problem that they need to fix.
Oh yeah, and thank you for bringing that up because it's like, oftentimes one of the things I see in couples is somebody will come, a couple will come in and there's one person who's like, fix my partner. Um,
Mm,
and so there is that balance of like, there's the thing that happens, and there's the reaction, then there's the reaction, then there's the reaction.
yeah.
And how can we bring that back to a place of like, oh, this is what I'm practicing, this is what you're practicing, and we're practicing this together.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, like, like do you have a specific like practice or technique that you can suggest to folks that they would be able to take from this and try?
Hmm. I mean, in the realm of somatic experiencing, one of the primary concepts and techniques is called resourcing, which we've peripherally been describing. Resourcing is defined as intentionally paying attention to that which is pleasurable, positive, and empowering people, places, things, activities, real and imagined,
Mm-hmm.
until it like supports your nervous system, and then so that can feel like a deeper breath, a relaxation in your shoulders, more presence in your pelvis. um, so paying attention to those positive pleasurable things until our nervous system registers it and takes it in on a deeper level. I will say, though, that it's important to be mindful of the fact that oftentimes we have this kind of default pleasure threshold setting, kind of like in a thermostat setting. We've got only like that's set to like 72 degrees or 65 degrees. Like if our experience of pleasure or intimacy or fulfillment goes beyond what our nervous systems have been historically kind of like programmed to via conditioning and trauma, it's like
Mm-hmm.
only safe to experience this much pleasure, it's only safe to experience this much joy. Then like mechanisms can kick in that can attempt to like turn the temperature down. So savor with resourcing. Also be compassionate with yourself when you hit your pleasure threshold, and you might start feeling uncomfortable for feeling so darn good.
I I laugh at that, and I know that place. I know that place really well. Like
Yeah.
we have we have the expansion, and then we have the
Mm-hmm.
contraction.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like what just happened? Like why am I feeling this now? I mean, everything seems to be going well. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and yet there's often that come down that is it's a place to it's another place to explore pleasure. Like, how can I come down pleasurably, right? How can what are the things that I know about myself? And I think this is kind of what you're pointing to is, what are the things that I can point to for myself that are pleasurable, that are going to help me when I hit the wall of,
Mhm.
um, you know, of when I'm starting to feel that shutdown or that reaction.
Yeah. And in my Held and Fulfilled program, I talk about the five capacities, which is wonder, somatic mindfulness, threshold awareness, unlearning and learning, and polarity play. So, like that threshold awareness
Mm-hmm.
is like, okay, let's get mindful, let's get aware when we're hitting those thresholds. And there's like skills and tools and practices to ride that edge in a more conscious way where we're not just unconsciously default going back to our norm, but rather kind of like pushing the edge so we're increasing our capacity over time. It's not going to be a linear process. It's going to be more of like a ebb and flow. But with some intentionality, we can increase our capacity or our threshold set default temperature setting of goodness.
So I'm imagining, when you're talking about threshold. So
Mm-hmm.
for instance, in my own life, I know when things get really good,
Mm-hmm.
when my partner and I have had a really hot, sweet, sexy time,
Yeah.
um, I'll kind of try to start a fight. Like that's my
Mm-hmm.
threshold. That's the thing, my
Yeah.
threshold. And for over the years, I realized that one of my threshold pieces is to say something along the lines of like, oh, that was great. When are we going to do more? Or
Mm.
like there's this
Mm-hmm.
way in which it sort of invalidates the experience that, because I'm
Yeah, right?
so that
Great self-awareness.
I just realized that I've spent all of this time and energy looking at relationships because I was so bad at it in the beginning.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
But and thank you, by the way. But yeah, just like that knee-jerk reaction of, it's been
Yeah.
so good. And I invite people who are listening to consider, like, do you have a threshold? Do you recognize your
Mm-hmm.
threshold?
Mm-hmm.
And because I think it is one of these places where we sabotage ourselves, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I love that you've discerned the pattern. You can speak to it with a certain amount of humor and humility. Um, and like you're kind of conscious of your particular survival strategy. You pick a fight, you do it this way. The fact that you can name that helps you be more conscious of that. And then so if it happens again, you've got a little bit more capacity, if a lot not a lot more capacity to make a different choice. Like,